Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Josh Prager, and we're talking about 20 Summers, a very special month of events in Provincetown that began this weekend. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me back.
Now, there is a great story behind 20 Summers, and because this is only the second year of the event, why don't you explain how this all got started and what 20 Summers is?
Well, thanks. First of all, the phrase 20 Summers comes from a poem by Stanley Kunitz. The beautiful poem Route 6, and the last phrase is, the last stretch toward home, 20 summers roll by. I always loved that poem, and I had the great honor of having Stanley Kunitz read it to me when he was in his late 90s, and I actually knocked on his door one day, and he welcomed me and asked me, what is your favorite poem of mine? I told him, and he read it, and I was just overjoyed.
And, of course, he has a long-time connection with Provincetown.
Exactly, and it's about sort of leaving the city and shucking off all of its encumbrances and heading to this beautiful spit of land. And I'm a New Yorker and really can relate to this feeling. And so 20 Summers for me was the perfect phrase. And what happened was I've been coming to the Outer Cape my whole life. I'm now 44. I've been coming since I'm 6. My parents brought me and my 3 siblings to North Truro every summer. I worked selling vegetables at Perry's Farmstead. In fact, I'm wearing the T-shirt right now of Perry's Farmstead. And I just loved P-Town. I was a waiter there, and I always had this fantasy that I could perhaps one day have a little cottage and write in it. I'm an author in New York City, and the problem was I hoped to be on the water. Water cottages are too expensive. And in looking for a place back in 2009, I saw the Hawthorne Barn on this hill in the east end of P-Town, and I couldn't believe it was for sale. And my shock sort of quickly went into sadness that this very important place that was once the Cape School of Art, a famous art school a century ago, was for sale. I said to myself, it's going to turn into a condo, and it needs to be a nonprofit. And that was really where the idea came to somehow buy the barn, get it fixed up, and open it up to the public, and maybe get to enjoy a little bit of it myself too.
And so, as it happens, of course, the Hawthorne Barn being almost this iconic symbol of Provincetown and the arts colony in Provincetown that started 100 years ago, as you said, it was for sale. It turned out you weren't exactly able to buy it per se, but you were able to use it for a month.
Well, I was able to buy it, but I wasn't able to afford to keep it. I did buy it. Olga G., the wonderful and eccentric woman who owned it, she was the widow of the artist Peter G. She had inherited the barn, and it had really kind of fallen into disrepair. I said to her, look, allow me to buy it at this sort of affordable rate, and I promise I'll turn it into a nonprofit. And I kept that promise. The problem was it took years to get all the permits, and each year I was paying the mortgage, and I was paying the taxes, and I was paying insurance, and I couldn't afford to keep it anymore. But I got all the permits I needed, and I had this idea that, you know what, the permits to renovate the barn and to open it up back up to the public. And just before I tell you what then happened, how this came to be, there was a wonderful vote of confidence from the people of P-Town. They voted $75,000 of the town dollars toward the renovation of the barn. And even though we ended up using a different model and vehicle to make this happen, that was a wonderful vote of confidence that made me realize, hey, the town wants this to happen. So what did end up happening was a wonderful couple, Adam Moss and Daniel Kaiser, that bought the house right next to the barn from Olga as well. I said to them, look, I will sell you the barn at the low price that I paid for it if, in turn, you renovate it and you give it to my nonprofit for 1 month of every year, May 15th to June 15th. They said deal. They renovated it beautifully, and finally, from 2009 to 2013, after all that planning, we were able to open the barn back to the public with the first season of 20 Summers in 2014. And now we're ready to do it for season number 2.
And so for your first year last summer, this is the inaugural year of this sort of complicated logistic event, and also a rich month of poetry and music and spoken word. How did that go last year? What were the high points last year?
So I like that you mentioned the complicated logistics. Yes, I'm a journalist. I've worked in places like Tehran, and Provincetown is just as complicated and persnickety as Tehran. But once the logistics were worked out, it went great. People were very happy. There were 5 weekends, and we decided to have events, concerts, and conversations, as one of my co-founders, Ricky O'Patterney, put it, on the weekends. And during the weeks, we had artists coming to paint and teach in the barn. So there were sort of residencies in the week and events on the weekends for the public. Some of my favorite events, well, I loved that we had a concert by Kaki King, an incredible guitarist. Rolling Stone called her one of the guitar gods. She was incredible. That was beautiful. We had a day of storytelling, which is true to my heart, which was fascinating. And the theme of that day was coming out. People who had stories coming out, whether it had to do with sexuality or whether it was coming out of prison or all sorts of different types of coming out. There was a one-man play. James Lacine had a beautiful play that was incredible. And I should mention, by the way, that a lot of our events, people had no idea they were coming to such special things. A lot of our events in this little barn on this, bluff in P-Town went on to have incredible second lives after our event, after our month finished. For example, Michael Jewell, I mentioned him. He was the man, this former prisoner who was in prison for 40 years. The story he told ended up on This American Life. James Lacine, the man who did this beautiful one-man play. That play is now performing to sold-out audiences off Broadway in New York and just got a rave review in the New York Times. So it was very exciting. It was experimental, but people came and saw special things that are now living on in much bigger venues.
People have an opportunity to maybe get ahead of the curve culturally if they go to see this year's events. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're talking about 20 Summers, a month-long cultural event in Provincetown that began this weekend. Now, getting right into this year's events, what are some of the highlights this year? What are things that people need to get their tickets for right away?
Well, we took a great leap forward from last year, and a lot of the people who would not return our phone calls last year did this year, which is sort of shocking. So we have these incredible talent coming. So, for example, we have writers. Michael Cunningham and Adam Gopnik are going to be in the barn on Sunday, May 24th. We have a play that was directed by one of the heartthrobs when I was growing up, Mary Stuart Masterson. That'll be Friday, May 29th. We have, I think what I'm most excited about, we have 2 events with Stephen Merritt. Stephen Merritt is the lead singer and the whole sort of essence of the band, the Magnetic Fields. I actually can't believe he's coming to the barn. We have a concert by him, which is on Saturday, June 6th, Saturday night, and also a fun event the previous night, Friday, June 5th. He's a real wordsmith, and he wrote a little book about all of the 2-letter words that are acceptable in Scrabble, and we'll be discussing that book with him. The next day, we have Barney Frank, which is kind of incredible. He will be there Sunday, June 7th. I guess there's so many exciting events. I should mention that we're also very careful to always be true to the history of the barn. And so the last day, Sunday, June 14th, we have a symposium, a 2-part symposium on the artist Hans Hofmann. That's very exciting. Other highlights are people right here from the Cape. Patty Larkin, the incredible musician, she's there Saturday, June 13th. And the Parkington sisters, who are from Wellfleet, I believe, are on Saturday, May 30th. So there's really just a lot of good stuff.
Now, how do people get tickets, and is it necessary to get them way in advance? How does that all work?
Well, you go to our website, 20summers.org. That's 20summers.org. Shockingly for us, one of our events is already sold out, and we haven't even gotten going. That was the Barney Frank event, but there are tickets to all of the other events, so still there. And some of them, though, the barn, one of the beautiful things about the barn is how intimate it is. It seats only 75 people. Now, that includes the performers, the people who work for the nonprofit, the AV people, so we can only sell 50 seats to these events. That's why it's so special. You know, when Stephen Merritt comes to New York City, he'll play in a big, big venue, but here he is playing in front of 50 people. So that's why the tickets go pretty quickly. So the other thing that's very dramatic, I should mention, is the most beautiful part of the barn has this north-facing window, this 15 by 15-foot window. Now, it's north-facing so that all through the day, when it was used as an art studio, there's this sort of beautiful light. It's not dependent on it rising or setting. But as the sun sort of does set, you see, as if it was being done by us on purpose with this dramatic lighting, the barn grows more sort of golden, and then it fades. So nature is very much in evidence when you come to the barn. You feel that though you're 2 blocks away from Commercial Street, you are in a land far, far away.
I want to go right to your sold-out performance, even though we can't get tickets to that. How did you invite Barney Frank to come, and how did that all come about?
Well, I didn't know that he had a memoir that had just come out until I read the review in the New York Times. It's got the great title, Frank. I said, man, that's perfect. And then it hit me, wait a minute, maybe, just maybe, this remarkable man will come to the barn. And, you know, the reason we're getting these sort of special people to come to the barn is not because of us. It's because of the barn. The barn is what made Provincetown, Provincetown. You have this one building that over the 100 and whatever it is, 8 years now, has had people like Hans Hofmann and Jackson Pollock and Tennessee Williams and Norman Rockwell and Norman Mailer. You know, I'm an investigative journalist. I make sure to tease out fact from fiction. And on our website, I put some of the quotes that these remarkable people have said and written about the barn. So, you know, this is the place that made P-Town what it is. And when we approach a person like Barney Frank and say, hey, look, here's what we can offer you. It's not an enormous honorarium, but if you come, you know, you can be part of the sort of resurrection of this magical space. And I should mention, by the way, the only reason that we are able to exist is because of donations. I make no money. That's zero, in fact. I lose money. I paid for my gas on the way here. Same thing with my 2 remarkable co-founders, Julia Glass, who's a National Book Award-winning novelist, and Ricky O'Patterney, who I met. He's in the tech world, and he used to produce the author lecture series at Google. A remarkable guy, invited me to speak there once when I wrote a book, and we bonded over this, and I told him all about P-Town. They make nothing either. So, you know, all of the money that we get literally just goes to making this happen. And what's beautiful, there's a guy, Sean McNulty in P-Town. He owns the Lobster Pot, or as he would say, the Lobster Pot. He calls me Josh. And he sort of went out door to door to all the local businesses in P-Town and said, hey, want to help? And they said yes. And then there were larger outfits that did as well. You have Comcast that, for free, is filming several of our events, and Ricky is the one who made this happen. They then edit all the footage and put it up on an on-demand station for people to view, and then those films end up on our website. So even if you don't get to go to one of the events, you get to then see it on our website. And Ricky is building this beautiful sort of, compendium of films. It's really lovely.
Anyone who loves Provincetown knows you get there and there's the problem of parking. Yeah. So where should people park if they want to go to this event?
It's true. Well, the town was very nervous at first. They didn't know quite what to make of us last year. Like, this is a residential neighborhood. What are we going to do? And we said, look, we promise we will abide the rules. And the rules were as follows. All events had to finish at 9:30. We couldn't have more than 75 people in the barn. And also, they couldn't be too loud. And we were not allowed to allow any parking on the street. And we said, no problem. So you'll see one of our volunteers. And by the way, if you want to be a volunteer, please go on our website and email us that you will volunteer. That is a way, by the way, to get in to see Barney Frank. And so we have our volunteers who will stop you at the corner of Miller Hill and Bradford, and they will direct you to the parking lot of the local funeral home in P-Town that has so generously donated the use of the lot to us. And they are one of many, many outfits in town that has allowed, I believe it's, and I might be getting this wrong, it's the Gately Funeral Home. If I got that wrong, I apologize. Go on our website and it'll be right. And you'll see our, trusty little volunteers sort of directing you to the barn. It's very easy. If someone can't walk very far, that's fine. We'll have one of those, like bikers take you over there in one of those rickshaw type deals. We really have, thanks to the town of P-Town, we have made it very easy to get to the barn. And what's magical is people who have lived in P-Town for years have never been to the barn. You go there, this is what it was like. And you know what? You know what's both sad and a testament to the importance of what we're doing? When I bought the barn, not that long ago, there were 4 fewer structures right surrounding the site. There are now 2 townhouses that were there, and also Adam and Daniel built 2 small, they're lovely, but they're additional, 2 small homes as well right there. So the barn is kind of the last sliver of what was, and it's lovely. You see, we have little lights sort of lighting this footpath, and you walk up these stairs, and you open this door, and there you are. And this is what it was like. There are handprints on the wall from some of the famous artists and teachers who were there. This beautiful window I mentioned, this gambrel roof. It's just very dramatic and romantic.
Quintessential Provincetown.
Yes.
And the tickets to this, it looks like from your website, they range from about $20 to $60 depending on the event. Is that right?
That's right. The last event, I believe, is free. The Hans Hofmann Symposium, which is great. And the reason it's free is because we got a wonderful grant from the Hoffman Trust in New York City. They gave us a grant last year. They were happy with what we did, and they gave us a grant this year as well. And yes, the only event that is more than the $20 or $25 that most of them are is the Stephen Merritt concert, and that's selling briskly. So I think it was actually quite fairly priced. I forgot to mention one event that is a very, very special event, which is a night of classical music. There is a chamber orchestra from Boston called L'Académie, and they will be performing in the barn. This is Saturday, May 23rd, this upcoming Saturday. I majored in music theory in college. If I were to go to any one event in the barn, it would be this one. 2 National Book Award winners, Julie Glass and Tobin Anderson, have created this evening. And what the evening is, it is both texts from great books and also music, all of which have to do with the sea and lovers who are torn apart when men run off to the sea. It's sort of looking at the ocean as this image of uncertainty and instability, and it's very, very beautiful. So I'm glad I remembered to mention that. I think you will really love it.
So many really special events coming up. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We've been talking about 20 Summers, a very special month of events in Provincetown that began this weekend. And I've been talking to the founder of 20 Summers, one of the 3 co-founders, I should say, Josh Prager. And thank you, Josh, so much for being with me here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.